part of this came to me over the last week, if you will. I'd written a book a little while back, and there was an article or a story in it about my daughter Blake, and this was probably when she was, I'm thinking she was about 5 years old. And anyways, just to kind of cut to the chase, we've got a cleaning lady that comes every week. And the day before, my wife and I, we always ask the kids like, hey, go clean your room or go do, just make sure that things are tidy because we have a cleaning lady, not someone that comes and organizes our house. So Blake, being a cute little 5-year-old and pretty smart, she said, Dad, I don't need to do that. That's what Glenda can do for us. And I thought, you know, even though she was young, I could tell that that type of mindset of expecting someone else to do the work for her was just the wrong belief system, if you will, right? Now, I could have just brushed it off, laughed, but we had a good conversation. And I explained to her the importance of whether she's playing on a soccer team, at school, in a group, whatever it happens to be, that philosophy of, well, that's not my job is not going to serve her. And so we discussed it, and I can kind of, looking back now, I can see, I don't know if that was like a pivotal moment or not for her, but she generally takes things very seriously when we talk about them. And now, I mean, she's the first person. I don't have to ask her to help clean up. I don't have to ask her to empty the dishwasher or do things around the house. Like, she is constantly helping and doing more than she's supposed to, if you will. And I can see that now in her soccer, and I think it's going to serve her very well. And how this kind of ties in, if you will, to investing and doing developments is like, because I'll just use real estate development as a game. There's always going to be things that are in the gray area. Who's supposed to do this? Who's supposed to do that? Like who's taking ownership? And I can tell you, just based on my most recent experience with my business partner Mark, that I can see you don't have to ask him ever. He's he's taking more on than anyone could expect. And it's why he's able to lead and why people follow. And so I've tried to do this myself, and I think I'm getting better at it, but I'm still aware of times that I will either blame or not take responsibility or ownership. And it never serves, right? Especially when you are operating at higher and bigger levels, right? So I'll give you a good example. Oftentimes when someone is kind of coming from the world of residential real estate into the world of commercial real estate, they typically will rely very heavily on consultants, lawyers, mortgage brokers, commercial real estate brokers, and they will essentially defer a lot of that decision making to them. And what I can tell you is that it's one of probably the biggest lessons that my mentor, Andy, my father-in-law, taught me, which was like, he will never do a deal where he's reliant on someone else to for the success of that deal, right? Like, if we don't have the skill set internally, if we don't take ownership of it, because at the end of the day, we're the players, we're the people on the field, we're the ones that have to essentially score or not score, or win or lose, if you will. And as you can see, sometimes, using the metaphor of a game when you're talking about real estate and investing, it's going to take some time for me to get this right, but we'll just keep rolling with it. So I appreciate you just sticking with me. So anyways, what else did I want to discuss? I don't really want to drag this out too long. I'm going to give you an article that I'm actually writing next week, and hopefully it will kind of highlight some of the challenges and some of the reasons that I'm actually creating this podcast. Okay, so just at a high level, there's a few things that my goal is for you to get out of this, right? The first is, I want to give you the real perspective on the world of investing in commercial real estate and development, not just the highlight reels. And I think I've done that in the past. However, it's obviously more fun to talk about successes than it is losses. So I'm going to give you an example of a very challenging project that I'm going through right now. It's almost at the end, but I'm going to just show you some of the things that can happen that you could never read in a book, or even if you read it in a book, and even when I explain it here, like the emotional struggles, if you will, as you go through it, like you will only know it when you experience it. And so hopefully hearing it, you'll have some insights into how you can maybe avoid it, right? And that kind of ties into number two, which is maybe talking some people out of investing or doing real estate developments, right? They're just like, if you're not going to be fully involved and immersed in this game of real estate development or commercial real estate, then it probably doesn't make sense to compete against people that are doing it full time. I'll use the analogy again of I'll use hockey as an example. And my son, I'm teaching him how to skate. I hired a coach, and so he's 6 years old now, and he's like just kind of learning, right? Well, if I took him out and put him against midget players, junior A, NHL players, people that have been playing the game for 20 years, I mean, it's laughable in terms of what his expectations could be. He would never even touch the puck. And I think that sometimes when someone new from the world of especially residential real estate, and then when they're trying to get into the commercial game, there's such a vast gap, if you will, that like they're going from no years, they don't understand the game, they don't really know the rules of the game, and then they're playing against people that have like 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years of experience. And when there's 7, 8, 9 figures on the table in terms of how much money can be made in a deal, just understand that that competition is ruthless. And and like I've just seen a lot of people, like there's a quote, I think, in this book that I just ordered, and I've kind of listened to the highlights of it. Zeckendorf, I can't remember, William Zeckendorf, I think is his name. He was a huge real estate developer out of New York, and I think he was worth billions, and then he went down to zero. But there's a phrase in it that says, more real estate investors will go bankrupt than become billionaires. And I can tell you, just from being in the business and industry for quite some time, that that is true. And that's not something that people talk about. Usually they talk about the fact that 90% of millionaires have made their wealth through real estate. And I don't even know if that stat is true, to be quite honest. I think a lot of people made their money in business, and then they parlayed it into real estate. That's generally the path I've seen a lot of people take. So I think just asking those kind of questions as to whether or not these aphorisms are accurate or not is valuable. The third point is, my hope is that I can save you from investing in the wrong property or the wrong person. That's also what the Investing Advantage did. So that's going to be a common theme. And then the fourth outcome that I'm hoping that this podcast will give you is that there will be some new ideas, right? There's no one way to invest in real estate or to do developments. Markets are changing, the type of market that you're in, the environment. I mean, what's going on in Vancouver or Toronto or San Francisco or New York is very different than what's going on in my local market. And so just understanding that when I'm on Twitter, when I'm on Facebook or LinkedIn, and people are showcasing the type of projects that they're doing, look, they can all work and they can all fail. And it really depends on who's driving those projects, and then obviously what's going on in the bigger world, the macro environment. And so I'm going to give you just a peek into some of the projects. One in particular, I'm not going to go into too much details, but anybody that knows me will know exactly which property I'm talking about. And this is just what happens sometimes in a real estate development. Okay, so the first challenge, if you will. So I'm just going to lay out some of the challenges, and this is just a brief highlight reel, if you will. I could literally write a book on this. So the city changed their mind once we had our DP submitted, and like we'd already talked to the city, and they essentially changed their mind. They asked us to raise the site by anywhere from 6 to 8 feet, depending on the location of or the height, if you will, and it cost us just about $400,000, and it was about a 6-month delay. The second issue is we had an easement for utilities already that was on title for us. However, when we went to the company that was going to provide hydro for us, they actually needed a separate easement specifically for them. That took us almost 12 months, tens of thousands of dollars to negotiate. And then the second and third order consequences, because not having power to our building probably cost us another $100,000, I would estimate. Interest rates went from 2.25% to 6.75%. The bank, as a result of that, reduced their construction loan to us, so we had to raise additional money. The rooftop units, so that's like the heating and ventilation, HVAC, if you will, they were delayed by over a year. We were forced to purchase a new generator at a cost of almost $35,000. Only lasted 3 months. I'm not going to get into all the reasons why, but that was another expense and investment. There was issues with the fire rating in between units. We had challenges with some of the consultants as it related to structural, geo. And so at the end of the day, this is like all these lessons now go into my mental bank. And so when I look at the next property, right, I can say, okay, like based on my experiences of like 15 years doing commercial real estate and developments, I can now analyze and not just take for granted, right? Like this easement, I'll just use that as a very good example. Like we talked to our lawyers, we reviewed it, we were very comfortable with what we had. However, now knowing what this specific hydro company needed in order to pull their lines, like we would know that no longer is acceptable, or we would have the conversation in advance with them to confirm, right? You can't just, like I said, rely on a consultant or rely on a lawyer or rely on anybody, because at the end of the day, when these challenges come up, as the developer, you're the one that's going to be responsible, right? And so blaming is like completely irrelevant, because like you could sue, you could do all these kind of things, but at the end of the day, you've got to solve the problem. And what it really comes down to is like the two things that I kind of focus on now is, and why I feel like we were actually fortunate on this particular project, was our LPs understood that we were doing everything we could to manage and work our way through this property. It will be a success at the end of the day, certainly not the success that we had originally thought, but they have supported us through the entire project. And the second was the general contractor, which I'm actually now a partner of. But when I started this project, I wasn't part of that. They were with us the whole way. They came up with solutions. My other general partner, like the two of us, Jason and I, we've worked very well together in spite of the fact of all these challenges. So like when the chips are down, when things are very difficult, I find that is where you really find out who you want to continue to do business with versus the people that, when things actually start to get difficult. And I'm having conversations with syndicators in the US frequently where, they bought multifamily properties and their pro forma just expected $25, $50, $100 rent growth over the, next 5 years. And now all of a sudden what used to feel like this is taking a month, 2 months, 3 months. They're having to give concessions. They're having to give longer or lower rents in order to attract people. Well, if all of a sudden now you have to cut distributions, you're going to start to field calls from your investors, like the people that are in for the long haul. You're going to start to find out whether or not they're with you. And let's face it, I mean, if you overpromised as a syndicator, then this is where like real estate is cyclical. It's going to have ups and downs. And I've been fortunate enough to have people in my corner, on my team, if you will, that have been through, multiple cycles, and they have that perspective to be able to assist and help in terms of making decisions. And so hopefully when you listen to the podcast, you will not just hear my stories, but also like I'm going to relay stories that I hear. Oftentimes these will be kind of behind closed doors, so I'm not going to be able to give, details, but hopefully you'll be able to take away the principles of what successful real estate developers, investors, business owners are doing to navigate these kind of challenging times. And hopefully it'll help. So that's really what I wanted to share with you today. A little bit of all over the place. Hopefully it makes sense. And what I would say is that if you've gone through some challenging projects and you want to share them with me, and you want to, obviously you can remain anonymous, or you can maybe even come on the show if it's interesting enough, just reach out to me. Probably the best is on LinkedIn. Just Google my name, Shane Melanson, hit me up there. And if I feel like the conversation would be both interesting to me and the audience, then I'd be happy to have you on. But this isn't about pitching a wholesaling course or how you flip homes, or like, there's enough podcasts on that. Like, I don't feel that really is, I'm not interested in it. And like I said, I really want to kind of discuss like how people are playing the game of development, growing a business at a very high level. And if you think that would be valuable to share, like I said, hit me up and I'd be happy to discuss that with you. So that's all I got. I got to get going. Have a great day. Bye for now.